Comrade Stephen Brady.
Here, sir.
Comrade Jim Scoggin.
Here, sir.
Henry Thomas. Henry Bruce Thomas. Gunny Sergeant Henry Bruce Thomas. Sir, one man absent and $235,000, including 2008 Navy personnel, 109 Marines, and 218 Army personnel who died 79 years ago this day at Pearl Harbor.
Thanks, sir.
Here we stand in formation to honor our brothers who served our nation. One by one, their names are read as our tears begin to shed. Their names are called, there is no sound, just solemn faces all around. 3 times in all their names were said, but they cannot hear, for they are gone. They will never shoot another round. Their rifles stick in the ground. I see the boots they used to wear, empty now because they aren't there. I'll forever remember the day they died. I'll remember today when we all cried. So on this day, we say goodbye. But in our hearts, they will never die. Officer of the day, will you obtain the drape in preparation for draping the charter? All rise. Officer today, you will now drape our charter in memory of our beloved comrade Henry Thomas, who has passed on. By so doing, we, as members of Floyd E. Brady Bluff Post 9182 and its auxiliary, offer solemn tribute to our departed comrade. Comrades, present arms. Order arms. Chaplain, will you please offer a prayer? Uncover.
Eternal God, let your mercy rest upon us as we, with grateful affection, remember Comrade Henry Thomas and those who died at Pearl Harbor, who have departed this life. We thank you for his days and their days upon earth and the joy that they brought, and may our remembrance of them live long among us and be to us a source of guidance and strength and determination. Give to those who miss him and them most deeply wells of consolation from which to draw comfort, and enable us to be your ministers of mercy to them in their time of need. Amen.
Amen.
Over.
Please be seated. I personally wish that I knew Henry when we lived in New Jersey, when he was stationed in the northern part of New Jersey. I think we would have gotten along well. And as mischievous as he is or was, and I used to tend to be, I think we could have gotten in trouble pretty well. But it didn't matter if he knew a person or not. He was always ready for a discussion. My son, who lives near Nashville and is an auxiliary member, even remembers him, even though they have only met shortly, once or twice. he called me when we put the notice out, and he said, is that the fellow that always likes to talk and was up in New Jersey? I said, yeah. So he stretched out, even to the plantation that Pat accused him of being from. I loved to joke with him, and he was always fast for the comeback. You couldn't get him. He addressed me as big guy. I don't understand why. All the time. And my memory of him will always be when he left anywhere that we were together. He would salute and say, hey, be cool, dude, and salute. We are going to miss him. I had to smile. Would anyone in the family like to say anything? Okay. I'm going to give Betty the chance to go first because Betty or two. Push the button on the end. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Connie, you know I have known you and Henry for years and years. The one thing you know that Henry and I had in common, and those of you that were at the cemetery the other day will remember this, were the years that he was up at the summit. And he and I always talked about his adventures with the wrestlers. We would get together for a little bit at each time that we could, and I would bring him up to date. You know, this wrestler's doing this and this, and they're planning on doing this and this with this wrestler, and we would go on, and he would tell me stories of his adventures with the top wrestling stars of that time. We had a great rapport. When he found out that I was involved with the wrestling group that was meeting at that time over at the Elks, he thought that was the greatest thing in the world. He told me to go for it. And so every time we had a wrestling match over there, he wanted to know how things went. Did they get me up in the ring that time, or did they keep me out that time? We absolutely had a ball. And Connie, I want to thank you so much. One of his dearest friends in the Wrestling Federation was Dusty Rhodes. He's a Hall of Famer and was one of the best wrestlers of his time. He and Henry were very close. Connie gave me Henry's picture, his autographed picture of Dusty Rhodes the other day. And to me, that is the most precious thing that she could have given me. I'm really going to miss my wrestling buddy.
For those of you that were not at the funeral or don't know Henry that well, Henry had a second life after a Marine, and I can't remember the name of the company, but he handled major events in Florida. Anything, circuses, wrestling, you name it, he was involved.
That was at the summit here in Houston.
Pardon?
And also at the summit.
Oh, the summit in Houston also. So he knew everybody, and everybody knew him. Would anyone else like to speak in behalf of Henry? Ron?
Yes. I'm a fairly new member of this post. I joined here in 2014. Henry was already here. He'd been here a long time. He'd also been a member of the Honor Guard. And in late 14, I joined Honor Guard, participated in a few events. Henry was always very nice. And then, for some reason, I volunteered to take it over. My wife is still wondering why I volunteered. But anyway, Henry was always very helpful when I was in. And Henry could, I could count on him. He and several of the old World War II and Korean War veterans were always up and ready to do what we needed. And Henry was always that. But my wife and I also remember Henry and Connie, mainly for his Marine hat on the bus trips, coming by for his donation for the driver. So Henry was and a very good friend. And all I can say on one of the first funerals when I was the commander was out at Fort Park Woodlawn. And one of the daughters of this Marine came across the grass, took off her heels, and walked across the grass, and was shaking everybody's hand. And she talked to Henry and the other Marines and said her father always had SOS on Sundays, and that was what she was missing the most. So Henry could make friends easy, and he was a wonderful man, and I was honored to work with him. Thank you, Connie.
And I will say, Henry did not leave the Honor Guard until Connie had to pull him out, kicking and screaming. He just did not want to give it up. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comments?
He's just that type of personality. He knows you. He knew you all along, and yet he'd never actually met you. Henry was the most successful, as I can recall, ever when it came down to puppy drives. That rascal could talk money out of the tightest person in the world, and he did it every time. Incredible. And I think what my boss lady says is that Henry was her favorite Marine. And I just loved to get after him for being a Marine. And of course, he told me what a slug he was, and a few other things. I just dearly loved the guy, and just like he said, he always would give you that be cool, and he meant it. I mean, he really did. And we shared one duty station that he was there back in Truman's day, of all people, and that was Key West, Florida. Of all the accidental places I ever landed, that was it. Didn't belong there, didn't have enough rank to be there, but I got there and I got stuck. Anyway, when he was there, he saw Truman. When I was there, all I saw was leftovers. But he just is such a fine, fine gentleman. He really was. And I never met him when he was a Marine, but I'll bet you he was a top AA Marine. He just had to be. He's just that kind of guy. And I know you guys are going to miss him. Oh, couldn't help it. We do. So anyway, Semper Fi, Connie.
Our years off at Hot Dog Tuesday. And sometimes I wasn't sure he'd repeat something. He was starting at that point in time to have some problems. But for those of you that don't know, he was actually a driver for Chesty Puller. And that's going some.
Oh, yeah.
Connie, we're going to miss him, and we're here to support you. Thank you.
Sir.
Yes.
To join the Honor Guard, I asked, okay, what are we supposed to do? What are the things that need to be done? And then after it was all explained to me, he took me aside and he said, that's most of it. Let me tell you what the rest of it is, because I want you to be cool. He always wanted to make sure that things went the way that they were supposed to be, but he had such a gentle way of explaining it. He felt like you were missing something if he didn't put the icing on the cake or the cherry on the top of the icing. That's part of how you get to be a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. You need to know all of your men. They need to know you completely and what you expect. You need to know how to make the most out of your men, their weaknesses, their strengths, and for them to all enjoy it, and for all of them to call on you when they need something. And he never lost that. He carried that forward everywhere he went. He most especially did it here in the post. He was a gunnery sergeant here in the post, just like he was in the Marines. And now there's 12 pearly gates, and I'm sure he's in charge of the duty roster on one of them. Thank you, Connie, for sharing Henry with us.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Good evening. I have a firm belief that Henry can hear everything we say. He's right here now looking at all of us. With that in mind, I simply want to tell him how much I and the members of the command over the years have cared about him. I remember when Jim Babin called me and told me about his death. Jim was naturally very upset. So was I. So was those who I called. Henry had a way. He just was a very unusual and instructive and loving individual. And I just wanted to tell him, I didn't think I said it enough, how grateful I was for all the assistance he gave me. He gave Peyton, I'm sure he gave Frank and Don and others over the years. We leveraged him a lot. We always asked for his advice. We always asked for him to take that extra step to help us help this post. And this post has been very successful over the last few decades because somehow, magically, Henry Thomas has come around. They show up and they carry the ball and they make the post much better than you think it could be. I saw that. Every commander who worked with Henry saw that. We're so grateful that he was here and he was part of us. And Connie, I know it's been said 2 or 3 times, thank you for sharing him with us. He will truly be missed.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? Oh, your point. Oh, Charlie White, yes.
Hi over there, excuse me if I didn't know. By the time I got up, I had told. I don't talk about it, the hot dog joint. Everything, Henry come table to table. Like, he went from table to table, he said, hi everybody. His first words to you were, how you be? And I know when he crosses that throne and meets the good Lord, the first 2 words to him is going to be, how you be?
Is there anyone else? All right, that concludes our draping ceremony for Henry. Escort.